Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by RotoWire's free trial, rotowire.com/try. You get a free look behind our paywall and DraftKings Pick 6. It is Friday, October 18th, 2024. Alex Barutha here, Shannon McEwen, and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard.
We're talking bold predictions today. That will be later in the podcast, but right now we are going to jump into some relatively big news.
Big news.
Kawhi Leonard, we got the notification yesterday. He will not be ready for opening night, and he is, quote, out indefinitely as he rehabs right knee inflammation. Has yet to begin basketball activities. This was after in September they said that he would be limited to begin camp and that he was hopeful to play opening night. Shannon, maybe you were thinking this might happen anyway. But with this news now official, how are you approaching this in fantasy drafts?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes Kawhi a bit riskier. I will say, previously they already kind of alluded to him not being ready for the start of the season. So I don't, just because we threw an indefinitely tag on it, I don't think it really changes that much from where he was at a week or two ago. I am a bit more hesitant to select him with a top 50 pick now. Quite a bit more hesitant. I think best ball, it's a little bit different. I think you have a little bit more wiggle room there, but top 60 pick, probably not. Top 70, I might still be comfortable enough to pick him and just stash him on my bench. It's a risky pick, but we've seen with Kawhi these past few seasons too. If he plays, he's providing stellar fantasy value.
He's always one of the first names I bring up in auctions to let other people spend money. And this year, he was a league winner last year because he was up to 68 games last season. But, it seemed like a career high. It was a league winner for a lot of people, but that's what people remember. People have short memories. Let other people spend money there. I was doing that before this news, doing it after the news.
Yeah. Does this? I feel like for the people who are already optimistic on James Harden, this might push him in close to the first round for some people.
Yes,
potentially at the turn.
Absolutely.
Let's go to some more injury news, Ken.
Yeah, bad news out of Oklahoma City. Isaiah Hartenstein suffered a broken hand in preseason. Will be reevaluated in 5 to 6 weeks. That means he's not going to see the court until December. That presumably means Chet Holmgren's moving back to center. How far does Hartenstein slide down boards for you two guys?
For me, I think I drafted him at like 70 in one of my leagues. Depends what kind of league you're in. You could go relatively high on him. But he has a large, swing in his fantasy value based on his minutes. I will say now it's tough to take him inside the top 100. I would push him if you want to take him at like 95. Like I'm not gonna say you're insane because I do think he could come back and might play 30 minutes a game next to Chet and have a career year. I think that's possible, but it's just it's tougher to say that he should definitely be drafted inside the top 100 now.
I will call you crazy if you draft him within the top 100. His ADP right now on Yahoo is 75. On ESPN, it's 106. I would put him in like the 120 range right now. I think there's it was never a given. I don't believe there was a single report that said Hartenstein's locked in as the starting center for the OKC Thunder. There's been speculation that he's going to start, but there's a very good chance they would have started Caruso, Dort at the 3, Williams, Chet at the 5. I think one of the great things about Chet is playing the 5. That's added value that he gives you. The fact that he's a stretch 5, he can protect a rim. Hartenstein takes some of that away when you move Chet to the 4. I would have been surprised if Hartenstein was locked into the starting lineup all season, even if he were healthy. Now, what I fully expect to happen is the Thunder will get off to a great start, and they won't ever entertain the idea of Hartenstein entering the starting lineup unless an injury opens the door for him. I think they're going to have a great record upon his return, and Hartenstein's going to be the first backup big off the bench. That puts him in the 120 range for me.
Ken, do you think we should see Chet Holmgren get a boost in fantasy because of this, or was he already being drafted so high that
I mean,
It's
one thing
kinda-
Hartenstein can do is rebound. So I think there was some legitimate concern about Holmgren's boards taking a little bit of a dip, and I think he can remove a lot of that concern, at least for the first part of the season, and if what Shannon says is true, all of the season. But the boost is the rebounds for Holmgren. Many more there.
Shannon, we got some news out of Chicago.
Yeah, exciting news. Lonzo Ball made his return earlier this week after not playing since January of 2022. He's been sidelined due to multiple surgeries stemming from a torn meniscus, requiring a rare double cartilage transplant. In 15 minutes against Minnesota in the preseason game, Ball had 10 points, 4 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 3 from downtown, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block, 0 turnovers. All right, fellas, how do you anticipate Lonzo Ball impacting fantasy this season?
You know, when I'm old. As a hallmark of the show, I am old. When I walk up the stairs, my knees make this Rice Krispie snap, crackle, pop noise. And I think, oh, I sound like Lonzo Ball. This is great. I think it's wonderful news he's healthy. They'd be crazy not to put him on a minutes limit. So his per minute stuff's going to be nice. But how does he ever get enough minutes to be of value? I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. I think he just looked like the Lonzo Ball we've always known, just in terms of like what he's doing out there on the court. You're right. The minutes will be tough. I don't. Maybe he steals a little bit from Giddey, a little bit from Dosunmu. I don't think Ball's going to play back to backs, so that's a problem. If you want to draft him with your final pick in a standard, not going to kill you for it. But any earlier than that, I think that would be bold.
You have been known to massacre
Yeah.
people for drafting. Well, gentlemen, let's take a little fan feedback here in the show. We got some nice comments. There we go. Here's a trade inquiry. I will say yes, but do you guys give us your thoughts? Should this gentleman trade Quickley? Oh, and Poole for Tyrese Maxey.
That's close to me, just because I feel like you'd probably in a points league. He's in a points league per his question above. In a points league, you'd probably start Poole every week. Assuming he's averaging like 30 fantasy points per game. So if you're trading 2 starters, it's questionable. Like to me, it's kind of a wash. But Maxey has a ton of upside now. Like it's just with Embiid being limited and Paul George starting the season hurt and everything. So I think check your here's my final. Check your waiver wire. See if there's anybody on there that you like. If there is, make this deal and then grab that guy off the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think that extra roster spot that you're creating with it really does. Yeah, it is the primary deciding factor for me. If you're able to pick up a guy who has top 90 upside, who's currently on the waiver wire, then I like it. But in general, I like Maxey more in rotisserie than I do points-based leagues. His solid percentages really play well for the rotisserie leagues. And I admittedly am high on both Quickley and Poole in points-based formats this year. I think they could come very close to Maxey's value individually, each of them. My issue with Maxey is I think we saw the ceiling last year. They've got Paul George in tow now. I know Embiid's going to be limited. Maybe 65 games from Embiid. Still, with those 65 games, we know Embiid's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. And then you have Paul George. I think Maxey takes a little bit of a dip this year from where he was at last season. Still very solid top 40 fantasy player, but in points-based leagues, I might stick with Quickley and Poole there.
All right, and then a question about the injury news to Kawhi. James is asking, hey, is Derrick Jones of the Clippers, now with the Clippers, formerly the Mavericks and other teams, is Derrick Jones a pickup now with Claw out? He's in a 14-team league.
I would lean no. If you're desperate for blocks and steals, Yes, but I don't know who's desperate for anything at this point in the season, but the season hasn't started. Like his best season ever in Roto, Derrick Jones, 2019-20 in Miami. He saw 23 minutes a game and he ranked 154th. Maybe there's potential for him to be better. Kawhi's out. This Clippers team is really shallow, but I don't. To me, I'd rather pick up someone we'll talk about later, like Kevin Porter Jr. or Norman Powell.
Yeah, I'm with you, Al. Derrick Jones Jr. per game value last year was 243. If you look at later in the season when he just at the start a bit, but I don't envision him being much more than what he was at his peak with Dallas last year. There are more intriguing players on the Clippers that I would target instead.
All right, well, we're going to talk bold predictions a little later in the show, but before we do that, we'd love to share a quick word from our good friends at DraftKings Pick 6.
We're thrilled to be partnering up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. And we still got a little time before opening night, but plenty of NFL options available over at Pick 6. Really been enjoying playing there each and every weekend. I think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. For football, we're talking yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in your picks and compete against opponents for a shot to win huge cash prizes. Download the all-new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. For new Pick 6 customers, play at least $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Again, that code is ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Always a delight to hear from our good friend Nick Whalen.
Yes. All right, let's talk some bold predictions. I'm going to kick things off. If you are picking at the 12-13 turn, or maybe even a little bit earlier, you should consider Karl Anthony Towns in that spot as a first-round value this season. Look, I think the move to New York, he could get back up to 10, 12 rebounds a game. Maybe he gets up to a block and a half per game. Like you forget how low he has fallen in terms of rebounds and blocks. Like last year and the year before combined, 8.2 rebounds, 0.6 blocks because he's playing power forward. Now he's a traditional center, sort of. I mean, he's still going to shoot threes and stuff, but he's a center for the Knicks. And he was a first-round fantasy value throughout the bulk of his career. It's only been recently that's changed. So I would draft him there.
I like the pick. Very, very bold. I like the pick. And the thing I like most about it is you pointed out the rebounds. So we've got a debate going in the office of who's the better rebounder, Julius Randle or Cat. And we know it's going to be Cat. We'll see that this year.
Certainly, without Gobert next to him, there's, and without like a standard old school power forward. I don't know if he's wonderful forward, but not a classic power forward like maybe a Randall is. You'd think there's going to be room for improvement. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know this isn't like the hottest take in the world, but his ADP right now is 22. So you're jumping like a full round if you're picking him at the turn, which is something you have to do. And that's where I'll plant my flag. Thank you.
Bold!
Thank you, Ken. Hot take.
What's
your hot take? What's your bold prediction?
I'm going to juice this with some enthusiasm. Cam Thomas will be a top 30 player in the 24-25 season. He was ranked 129th last season, 9 category total stats. That's from 66 games. The Nets are terrible. He's the only guy on that roster who can create his own shot. Dorian Finney-Smith will not be a 4-move player, on the offensive end. Thomas is only 23 years old. There's plenty of room for improvement. He's actually a fantastic free throw shooter. Everyone thinks he's just a scorer. And he has stocks, will be over 1 this season. And he's probably going to get a 3 to 4 minute boost in minutes from the 31 a game he got last year because there's no depth on this squad. So I loved Cam Thomas to explode this season for the Nets, who are tanking and are giving him all the minutes he wants.
Joel in the chat. Sorry, Joel in the chat says favorite players for a no percentage league, Cam Thomas. So
no
ahead,
percentage, like he shot 86% from the charity stripe last season.
He did.
And he's 44% from field goal, which I realize is not great, but it's not the terrible everyone wants to tag on Thomas. It's pretty darn good for your leading scorer.
All right, roll it in, Shannon.
This is a perfect segue into my first bold take, which is Cam Thomas will not be the most valuable fantasy player named Cam on the Nets. It's going to be Cam Johnson. Now, this is specifically for per game value, per game fantasy value. Last season, who was better, Cam Thomas or Cam Johnson? It was Cam Johnson. They were both in the 120s. That's despite Cam Thomas averaging 22 points per game. Cam Thomas even he hit another level late in the year. I'll hype him up. I love Cam Thomas this year. He's great for points-based leagues. Last 18 games of the season, he averaged over 26 points per game. There's a legitimate chance he finishes top 5 in the NBA in scoring this year. I'll concede that fact. But well-rounded overall per game production, give me Cam Johnson. This Nets team is going to need a second scorer. They don't have it. It's no one else. It's Cam Thomas, and then who? Cam Johnson's that guy. So we're going to see Cam Johnson come out. He's going to score about 19, 20 points per game, be the number 2 scoring option. He's essentially going to be the Nets peak prime Chris Middleton, right? Averaging 19, 20 points per game, handful of rebounds, handful of assists, getting you some steals, hitting a bunch of threes. Cam Thomas will be the most valuable Cam for fantasy on the Nets this season.
All right, and we're making our standard T-shirt wager here.
Yes, sir.
Best Cam on a per game basis, because as we know, Cam Johnson's only going to play about 55 games this year because he's always hurt.
All I care about the games. All I care about is the games they play, man.
Turning 30 this season, but okay. All right.
I will say Cam Johnson is definitely being underdrafted. 100% Cam Johnson should be drafted higher. It might depend on what kind of league you're in, whether you should draft Johnson.
You better have daily moves in that Cam Johnson league. You better have daily moves.
I just wish we would have seen a little more out of Cam Johnson to this point. But will he ever be in a better fantasy situation than this? No, nope. He will not. So that's 100%.
I just don't understand how the heck he only scored 13.5 points last season. There was plenty of shots for him.
I mean, Mikal Bridges should have scored more, but at some point he was just like, "Look, man, I'm out of here. Cam Thomas, do whatever you want, man. I'm good. I'm going across the street to the Knicks." Oh man,
Alex, what is your second bold prediction?
Second bold prediction: Kevin Porter Jr. will be a top 100 player. You should select him in all fantasy drafts. Now, the main problem with this, he could be suspended by the NBA. This is a big problem.
Don't let him date your relatives.
Yes, there was a legal incident, and he has yet to see suspension from the NBA. They could do it. It's kind of still up in the air, but he's been playing in preseason, so I don't really know. But we talked about Kawhi earlier in the podcast. Kawhi's out indefinitely. Do you trust him to play 50 games? Do you trust him to play 40 games? James Harden, he could be a first-round player. Has, generally speaking, been pretty healthy, but over the past couple of seasons has had a problematic hamstring, is getting older. The Clippers have no playmakers, as evidenced by someone in the chat asking if they should pick up Derrick Jones Jr. before the season has even started. And look, KPJ's been playing well this preseason, and when he sees 30 minutes a game, he has to be rostered in fantasy. Will he see that? Maybe not. But the chances of Kawhi being out and this team being short on playmakers, I just think they're going to need him at some point just to score and pass the ball for this team. So I think he's worth a gamble at the end of drafts.
Oh,
KPJ is 24 years old. 24 years old. He averaged in his last action, 22-23 season for the Rockets. He averaged 19 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.4 steals. Percentages are risky with him. He also hits threes, 2.43 pointers per game. If he somehow plays 28 minutes per game for the Clippers team, he'll produce, especially in points-based leagues.
Ken, we need a bold prediction from you.
Andre Drummond will be the most active waiver wire pickup throughout the upcoming season. This is all about Joel Embiid and the fact that he ain't getting healthier. Embiid's now 30. They've got him now playing with a knee brace. He's already saying he's not going to play in back-to-backs. Sixers made a point to go out and get Drummond. When Drummond started last year for the Bulls, he did that 10 times. He averaged 14 points, 17 rebounds, and almost 3 stocks per game. If you're in a daily moves league, Andre Drummond is going to be a gem on your bench for those 15 to 20 starts that he's going to get when Embiid is out. Look, I'm not saying, in season-long, weekly leagues that he's somebody you should spend a lot of money on in an auction, but he's available near the end there. And if you're in a daily league, my goodness, there's going to be some big nights and some valleys from Mr. Drummond. And that's why he will be on the cover of every waiver wire video made this year.
Do you know how many times I've typed out the words "when Andre Drummond starts"?
That's the entire gist of this bold prediction.
You're right. I think he should be drafted at the end of drafts. Last pick. It's just, again, if you're in your point about the daily moves league, 100% spot on. If you're in a daily moves league, it makes way more sense if you're in a weekly moves league and you got to try to predict the Embiid resting and the injuries and stuff.
Yeah. 10 team, 12 team leagues. Probably keep on the waiver wire, pick them up when Embiid's going to miss a couple games. That makes sense. The one interesting part with Drummond for me is fantasy football, handcuffing running backs, handcuffing players. Not really something I practice much in fantasy hoops, but with Embiid this year and Drummond, it does make some sense, especially if you're in a deep enough league. Best ball absolutely makes sense. So Drummond does it when he gets the playing time.
Shannon, what's your second bold prediction?
All right. Jaden Ivey, guard for the Detroit Pistons, will finish the season as a top 75 fantasy option. Jaden Ivey's ADP currently is 133 on Yahoo, 126 on ESPN. Meanwhile, my boy Ivey is out here balling during the preseason with shooting percentages of 61% from the floor, 52.9% from three-point, and 85.7% from downtown. Percentages have been an issue. Three-point shot has been an issue for Ivey his first 2 seasons. I do think we see that third-year leap from Ivey this year. Remember, he's top 5 overall pick. Great in college. Now he has a coach that knows how to cater to a dominant 2-guard lineup. JB Bickerstaff, not a huge fan of the guy, but the one plus is last couple seasons he had Garland and Mitchell in Cleveland, and he was able to make it so those 2 guards could coexist and both be productive. I expect the same thing with Cade and Ivey in Detroit now. We've been seeing it this preseason. Those shooting percentages are absolutely ridiculous for Ivey in the preseason. He's on a hot streak, but if you take a close look, if you've watched a lot of Ivey play the last couple of years, the stroke is way smoother. He's way more confident. He looks like he's enjoying basketball more. I fully expect the third-year leap.
Is part of this bold take also a warning to avoid Malik Beasley?
Any of the veterans on the Pistons, Tobias Harris is fine. Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., those guys aren't going to play enough minutes. It's not going to happen. There is a chance. I do think there's a chance Beasley could start at the 3 for the Pistons. Asar Thompson, who knows when he's going to play. But I am not targeting veterans on the Pistons outside of Tobias Harris.
Bold.
All right. My third bold prediction. Jalen Williams of the OKC Thunder will return second round value, probably late second round value. He is just coming off of a thank you. He did suffer an ankle sprain yesterday. It was, quote, not severe. Okay. Nobody panic. But he already ranked 8 cat per game last year, 47th. And I looked up his numbers when Josh Giddey was not on the court and Jalen Williams was averaging like 26 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal and a half. This OKC Thunder team, for as deep as they are, they're not super deep with playmakers. Like, obviously you have SGA. I think Chet's going to do a little more this year, but you lose Hartenstein for like a month, 2 months. And Isaiah Joe, he can spray. But Jalen Williams this year, I think we're gonna talk about. You have a most improved player prediction later, Ken. Jalen Williams is my most improved player award bet. And I know people are gonna be like, he broke out last year. There's gonna be a whole article I'm gonna write. Long story short, most of the time, most improved player award winners, it's their first All-Star appearance on a winning team. I think Jalen Williams qualifies for that.
I look forward to that article. And fans, if you'd like to enjoy that article, sign up at rotowire.com/try for a free trial, because maybe Alex will write it in the brief window that you get the free trial. Or, stop being a cheapskate and buy a subscription to RotoWire. But start it off by going to rotowire.com/try. Love the Williams take. He's only 23. The arrow is still pointing up for Jalen Williams. And always make sure you get the right Jalen Williams when you're doing you don't want to accidentally get that backup center they have also named Jalen Whalen on the Thunder. For fantasy purposes, could they get rid of the other Jalen Williams?
There's a lot of Jalen's in the NBA. You just got to be careful. You can't just type in when you're in your draft room. You just cannot be typing in Williams or Jalen. Like, you got to really make sure when you're doing the right one.
Shannon, what is your next? Oh, wait, it's my turn. Sorry. Here's my third bold prediction. Let's see if I can pronounce this right. Bilal Coulibaly of the Washington Wizards, not Williams. Coulibaly is going to win Most Improved Player. Dean Koontz once wrote, "When tempers tossed, embrace chaos." There's nothing more chaotic than the Washington Wizards. It's a terrible roster. Kuzma's probably should and probably will get traded at the deadline. Coulibaly's only 28 years old. Flash greatness in EuroLeague and the Olympics. At some point, the stats are going to catch up with Coulibaly's hype. They absolutely love him in Washington. They can't stop talking about how fabulous he is. He's going to be bounced up to 34 minutes a game soon, and he's going to provide great wing stats. Will be a huge stocks guy, and with points that will grow. And he's working from a terrible base versus Jalen Williams. A lot more room for improvement.
I don't have any quotes from noted scholars like Dean Koontz for my final bold take. But this is a guy I talk about a lot. Walker Kessler, center for the Utah Jazz. Kessler will finish the season as a top 60 fantasy option. His ADP is 97 on Yahoo, 122 on ESPN. One of our listeners asked Hartenstein or Kessler. It's Kessler. It was Kessler before Hartenstein suffered an injury. It'll always be Kessler. Kessler last year, despite only playing 23 minutes per game, was still a top 85 fantasy option per game on a per game basis. He's going to play at least 26, 27 minutes per now that he's starting for the Jazz. by default, he's going to easily jump up to the top 60. I actually don't even think I'm being that bold by saying top 60. He's probably going to be top 50. We talked about it during our undervalued topic a couple weeks ago. I'm drafting him as if the breakout that didn't happen last year is happening this year. Last year, I was happy to take him in the top 50 or top 60, and I would pick Kessler there this year. You don't have to, though. His ADP is so low, you can wait until 80 to select him and still get a good value. Walker Kessler will break out this year, and he is a better, most improved pick than Jalen Williams.
Can I want to throw a question your way, Shannon. Walker Kessler or Jalen Duren?
It's Duren.
Hit
It's
him in the heart.
It's Duren, but I legitimately I do think it's way closer, and you can argue it's a toss up, but it is Duren.
Okay, I agree. I'm relatively high on Duren too, so that's why I lean. But 100%. I mean, if you're
Kessler
targeting
or beef stew.
Kessler Edwards.
Shannon pick a
I'll take Kessler Edwards over beef stew.
No, I like that prediction, Shannon. He the blocks upside is hard to ignore, and the rebounds. Like,
yeah,
if he gets the minutes, it's there, and that's what we're talking about near the end of drafts.
Okay,
let's
take some questions. Alex, did you have one queued up there? I spoke over you.
I didn't have one specifically.
Oh, here's a trade question from Greg. Brandon Miller, Coby White, Poole, or Quickley? I'm sorry, not a trade question.
It's just a general question. I think, that's interesting. I mean, I think Quickley or Brandon Miller probably have the most upside. The thing with Miller's been shooting the lights out in preseason. My only concern about him, like from a fantasy perspective, is like I don't think he's gonna do anything assist wise. But if it's points, threes, and defensive stats, he'll be great. And I think White's being undervalued. We talked about it. I think on the last pod where there's just not that many guys out there averaging 20 points, 5 assists on efficient shooting.
You can get White a lot later than these other three, though.
Yeah, the ADP order is Quickley, Miller, White, Poole.
Yeah, Quickley and Miller are pretty close ADP wise, with White and Poole being next. I'm siding with Quickley. I love what we saw from him with Toronto last year. I think the one negative is really going to be his shooting percentage, but he's going to have impact stats in multiple categories. I think he and Miller have the most upside for this year, and those are the two guys that I like most. Quickley, Miller. I would go Poole third, and then White.
Question about the Kings, gentlemen. Thoughts on Fox and Sabonis's fantasy value now that DeMar DeRozan has been added to this roster?
I don't think Fox is going to take a hit, really. At least I'm not projecting that. I could see Sabonis taking a small hit, maybe from points and assists, but his stat profile is just so unique. Like just a guy who can get triple doubles that relative to his like 8 cat ranking, he always gets overdrafted, but it's kind of hard to blame people for doing that. So I'll say a slight downgrade for Sabonis, but it's nothing crazy for me.
It's made it so like in basketball, Sabonis goes round 1 pretty easily. It's made it so I can't draft Sabonis. I can't. He has to drop to the second round in best ball for me to select him. He averaged. He was great, absolutely great last year. Averaged 8.2 assists, which was a career high. I fully expect that to come back down. He was 7.3 the year before, 5.2 in 21-22. 6.5, maybe 7 assists instead of the 8.2 we saw last year. And even that might be overdoing it. I mean, our projections, we have him projected for 5.6 assists. So if he dips to 5.6 assists, it's going to be tough. And in a similar vein, I do also expect his scoring to drop off a little bit. So we're looking at a guy that went 19, 14, and 8, going 8, 17, 18, still getting tons of boards, 13 boards, but 5 or 6 assists instead of the 8. That's a pretty significant dip. So Sabonis is the guy that I'm most worried about.
I've seen some people give Keegan Murray some helium, and I'm thinking that poor guy's going to be standing in the corner not getting the ball. And when you're a catch and shoot pass specialist and there's nothing to catch, that's a problem.
I agree.
Can you guys pull up James at a Taylor Hendricks?
Oh yeah,
question?
this is just James. Do you room with James? He's just pandering to you, right?
James is actually me.
That's your burner account.
James, we talked about Taylor Hendricks a little bit in our breakout podcast a week or two ago. So that's the only reason why I didn't include him in my bold predictions, because I couldn't have two guys that I already talked about who are on the same team. But Taylor Hendricks is right up there with like Cam Thomas for me, where I fully expect him to break out. He's going to have 1+ steal, 1+ block, and 1+ 3-pointer per game this year. He's starting for the Jazz. I love me some Taylor Hendricks, and my exposure reflects that.
All right. And let's now switching to old man news. What are our thoughts on CP3 with the Spurs?
I am worried a bit about like resting and back-to-backs and stuff like that. And just like being an old point guard. But if you need 5-6 assists per game potentially.
And steals.
Yeah, I think he'll still get steals, but I think he also knows that this is not necessarily, he doesn't have to try that hard on defense as he maybe was asked to in Golden State. But yeah, I mean, I think his stat profile, you know, he's being drafted. I don't even think he's being drafted inside the top 100. I have to double check on this.
Not in best ball.
No.
Not even close to best ball.
103 on Yahoo. I think that's fine. Just know that it's mostly an assists play.
Yeah, it definitely is an assist. And he still averaged 6.8 assists per game with Golden State last year, despite only playing 26 minutes, not getting a ton of starts with Golden State. I do think his role as a starter is more secure with the Spurs. Also, the Spurs, if the Spurs end up being more competitive than they're currently projected to be, which I think will be the case. Vassell's injury kind of complicates that a little bit. But they're going to be running Chris Paul out there, and I think we'll see a nice little bounce back season from him in his age 39 season. God, he's ancient, man. He's actually almost as old as me. It's unbelievable.
Here's my thoughts on Chris Paul. If you scoop him up late, he's practically free, and he's going to have some nice games early in the season, and then trade him, because you know what? Come fantasy playoff time, he's not going to be playing at all. He's going to be in the sauna. Spurs, the Spurs will probably be out of it, going for a better draft pick, giving Trey Jones a ton of minutes. He'll be CP3 will be bleeding from various joints and not asked to play, or at least getting the seconds of back-to-backs off and stuff. He's not going to see the minutes as the season goes on. And so take advantage of those early good stats and move him.
One more thought on Chris Paul. This is a good comp because they're drafted right in the same range on a lot of formats. Tyus Jones, Chris Paul. Tyus Jones, he's going to be starting for the Suns. I prefer Chris Paul over Tyus Jones this year. I'm probably in the minority there. I think Chris Paul has more upside. Just 2 years ago, the season before last, he was a very solid player, 13, 14 points per game, 8, 9 assists. I think we can see that. Tyus Jones, I think the experiment of the Suns running out 3 starting guards won't last all season. And we also know what Tyus Jones can do when he's in that kind of complimentary role. Not much.
Does that do it for our fan questions, Ken?
I think so. Unless there's one you want to really jump on.
I think we can wrap it up. Well, Ken, you don't have an old man rant for us.
Arg! Enjoy opening night. We should all be happy. Optimism runs eternal when you've drafted your squad and hopefully no one's gotten hurt yet.
New segment, Dean Koontz quotes. We'll start that next week.
Do you have a quote for us, Ken, this week?
I don't have a quote for us. Sorry, okay. I should have grabbed another Dean Koontz quote. Yeah.
No, you're good.
I don't have a quote. Sorry.
We'll wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, presented by DraftKings Pick 6 and RotoWire.com/try. Get the free look behind the paywall for all of our draft kit NBA content. Ken, take us out of here.
Attention passengers, this 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.